By the end of this video, you will understand why the most significant thing in the documented record of Karoline Leavitt and Jimmy Kimmel is not a walk-off, not a four-word reply, not a confrontation on a late-night couch, and not a fired-back response on live television, because none of those things happened. And the specific reason none of those things happened is more revealing than any of them would have been if they had. The fact check is the cold, open reversal. Yahoo News published it on April 29, 2025. The specific, flat-sourced, forensic finding that Karoline Leavitt had not been kicked off Jimmy Kimmel's show after a fiery clash, had not confronted Kimmel on live television in the way the viral videos described, had not delivered the specific Showdown Explodes confrontation that 68,000 views of a single YouTube video had claimed to document. The videos existed. The disclaimers were in some of them, the specific, legally required fine print register of the word fictional printed in the description of a video whose title announced a confrontation as documented fact. 68,000 views before the fact check on a single video about a confrontation that did not occur. This is the story of what actually happened between Karoline Leavitt and Jimmy Kimmel, the specific, documented, sourced, real record of their actual interactions, and why the real record is more damaging to the administration she represents than any of the fictional confrontations the fabrication channels have been producing in its place. The real record starts with a briefing, not a late-night couch. A briefing room podium. The specific white, institutionally formatted White House-stamped podium from which the press secretary of the United States of America conducts, in the flat, prepared question-and-answer register of the documented daily briefing, the specific institutional communication function of explaining the president's positions to the assembled press corps of the most powerful country on earth. Kimmel has covered Leavitt's briefings since her first day at the podium. He has covered them in the specific, flat, wry, line-by-line press play register of a man whose documented professional function is to find the most legible public record material and deliver it to his audience in the most efficient available form. He has not needed a confrontation. He has needed a clip, the specific institutionally produced, government-issued, White House-stamped clip of a press secretary saying the things she said in the briefing room, at the podium, on camera, for the record. January 15, 2026, Trump said in a Reuters interview that he had achieved so much in his second term that, quote, "When you think of it, we shouldn't even have an election." He said it in the flat, casual, completely unguarded register of a man who has been saying this kind of thing, in this kind of register, for long enough that the specific, documented, institutionally catastrophic nature of a sitting president suggesting the cancellation of midterm elections had stopped registering to him as something requiring management. Leavitt was asked about it at the briefing. She said Trump was speaking facetiously. She said it in the flat, practiced, completely confident register of a press secretary who has been given the specific one-word damage control answer, facetiously, and who is deploying it in the briefing room in the specific institutional "this is the answer" register of someone who has decided that facetiously is the complete and sufficient response to a Reuters interview in which the President of the United States suggested that an election should not be held. Kimmel covered it that night. He said so he left it to his lady chipmunk Karoline Leavitt to try to reel that one back in. He said it in the flat, wry, completely unhurried register of a man who has found the single most efficient description of the documented dynamic, not the performed outrage of someone who is discovering the gap between the Reuters statement and the facetiously defense in real time, but the flat, forensic voice of someone who has been watching the specific, daily, briefing room administration of a one-word damage control vocabulary for long enough to have a name for it. The name is Lady Chipmunk. 2 words, not 4. Not the 4-word walk-off reply that the fabrication channels have been constructing in the specific AI-generated disclaimer in the description 68,000 views before the fact check register of content whose documented function is to produce the confrontation the audience wants rather than the confrontation the record contains. The real confrontation is the one between the briefing and the monologue, the specific, documented, daily, institutionally structured confrontation between the things said at the White House podium and the things said from the desk at the Ed Sullivan Theater, in which the podium produces the clip and the desk provides the context and the audience decides in the specific, involuntary, recognition frequency register of people seeing the documented thing rendered in the most efficient available form, which register is doing the more accurate work. The April 2026 exchange is the most recent documented rung in the escalation ladder. The specific, sourced, People magazine reported, Yahoo News covered confrontation that the real record contains. Trump had demanded ABC fire Kimmel over jokes Kimmel made about Melania Trump in his April 23 episode. The specific, documented, presidential demand to fire register of a man who has been making this demand in this register since the first low-life post, who made it this time because Kimmel's monologue 3 days before the White House Correspondents' Dinner had included material about Melania that Trump described as disgusting and totally unacceptable. Kimmel replied, not to Trump, to the demand, in the flat, wry, completely unbothered register of a man who has survived a federal regulator's easy way, hard way formulation, a network suspension, a canceled all capitals Truth Social post, a cease and desist from Don Jr., a Paramount settlement, and a Wharton transcript segment, and who has found, in the specific, recurring, demand to fire register of the administration's response to his monologues, the most legible possible evidence that the monologues have been landing. He said it was a very light roast. He said it in the flat, wry, 6-word register of a man deploying the specific, understated comedic instrument of someone who has just been told by the President of the United States that a joke he made was disgusting and totally unacceptable, and who has decided that the most accurate description of the joke is a very light roast. Very light, 6 words, not 4. But the 6 words that do the work of 4, that place the presidential demand in the specific, comedic, scale of 0 to 10 register of someone who knows exactly what a heavy roast looks like and is confirming, in the flat, wry, completely unbothered voice of someone who has deployed the light roast and the heavy roast and every register between, that what the president is calling disgusting and totally unacceptable is, on the documented scale of Kimmel's available material, the lightest available option. Then, the Leavitt briefing clip. Kimmel played it. He showed Leavitt at the podium in the specific institutional briefing room register, saying there would be, quote, some shots fired in the room tonight at the Correspondents' Dinner. He played it. He paused. He said, in the flat, wry, jacket and cuffs register of a man who has found the single most efficient sentence for the documented irony of a press secretary using the phrase shots fired as a metaphor 2 days before a gunman actually opened fire at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You know who's going to be furious when she hears that. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. He said it in the voice of the briefing clip. He played the clip. He placed it beside the event. He let the distance between the metaphor and the reality speak in the flat, completely unhurried pause and jacket cuffs register of a man who does not need to explain what the audience already understands. The pause is the beat expanded in this script. The specific, unhurried, jacket and cuffs pause after the Leavitt briefing clip. The pause that does the work the sentence would do less efficiently, that lets the audience assemble the finding from the clip and the context without requiring the finding to be named, that trusts the distance between shots fired as metaphor and shots fired as documented event to produce, in the specific, involuntary, pre-verbal recognition frequency register of people seeing the documented thing placed beside its own most ironic context, the response that no sentence could produce as efficiently as the silence that follows the clip. The fabrication channels have been producing fictional confrontations between Leavitt and Kimmel since at least April 2025. The specific AI-generated disclaimer in the description 68,000 views register of videos whose titles announce walk-offs and 4-word replies and kicked off the stage moments and fiery clashes, and whose descriptions, in the fine print, acknowledge that none of it occurred. The fictional confrontations exist because the audience wants them. The audience wants them because the real confrontation, the daily, briefing room, clip and context, shots fired as metaphor beside shots fired as event confrontation, is less dramatic in format but more damaging in finding than any fictional walk-off could be. A walk-off is a moment. A briefing clip is a document. A 4-word reply is a sentence. A very light roast is a 6-word complete and final assessment of the presidential demand that produced it. And the specific, documented daily confrontation between the things said at the White House podium and the things said from the desk at the Ed Sullivan Theater is not a moment. It is a record, accumulating rung by rung, briefing by briefing, clip by clip, in the flat, wry, press play register of a man whose documented professional function is to find the most legible public record material and deliver it to his audience in the most efficient available form. The fabrication channels need a walk-off. The real record has something more durable. Facetiously, Lady Chipmunk, shots fired as metaphor, very light roast, and the pause that follows the clip in the specific, unhurried, jacket and cuffs register of a man who has been playing the briefing clip since the first briefing and who has found, in the daily, institutional, government-stamped, White House podium-produced material of Leavitt's documented professional output, the most consistently self-generating monologue source in the documented history of his show. He does not need a confrontation. He has a briefing. He presses play. He pauses. He lets the clip speak. And the clip, in the specific, flat, daily, institutionally produced register of a press secretary saying the thing she said at the podium, on camera, for the record, does the work that 68,000 views of a fictional walk-off were trying to do, and does it without a disclaimer, without a fine print, without the word fictional in the description. The briefing is real, the clip is in the record, the pause is in the record, and the specific documented 6-word reply to the presidential demand to fire, it was a very light roast, is in the record beside the demand, in the flat, wry, completely unbothered register of a man who has been doing this since 2015, and who is found in the daily briefing clip and the press play pause and the very light roast assessment, the 3 instruments that require no fictional confrontation, no walk-off, and no 4 words to be complete. Subscribe right now, turn on every notification, because tomorrow's briefing is already scheduled, and whatever is said at the podium, on camera, for the record, will be on this desk before midnight.